Blackstone versus Blackrock. Well, I can't count how many times I've seen financial YouTubers incorrectly refer to the institutional investor purchasing large volumes of residential homes as Blackrock. So please understand the correct firm that they mean is Blackstone. Last week, Senate indeed passed a bill, aka 21st Century Road to Housing Act, intending on barring large institutional investors from owning more than 350 units of housing. Still needs to be approved by the House to pass. Financial astrology. If one were to do a search of financial astrology on YouTube, etc., one can find countless pages of people claiming endless success in terms of investing by matters of the moon and stars. If you are a believer in horoscopes, this may be appealing to you. If this describes you, I'd like to help you grasp the skeptic's rationale here, how one can adequately understand the value of arithmetic and accounting and what that means in terms of business integrity, while simultaneously believing that a celestial body billions of miles away might affect Apple's PE ratio. Highlights why astrology is hard to grasp for many involved in traditional investing. Many responses to skepticism in this regard is often met with a bit of victim complex, as though the skeptics are merely closed-minded bullies. Given how few actually grasp what the scientific method truly entails in this regard, it might shed some light here. I think an intellectually honest explanation may offer some insight, as I'm not interested in drawn-out debates belittling someone for believing in one thing or not believing in another. Indeed, this discussion often comes down to people speaking past each other in many respects, which is a common theme in many arenas today. It's fair to mention that there are large portions, especially in Asia, that indeed invest heavily due to astrological matters, so it isn't to say that there is little material interest here or that there might be some zero influence actually occurring. That is a lot different from the belief in vague terms about energy or gravitational poles of Orion having an observable effect in repeatable conditions here on Earth. The skeptic should understand that parallels do indeed exist in this respect. For example, even the most skeptical paramedic or ER nurse will often remark that the full moon observably aligns with more patients in need of emergency services at the time. There is a very noticeable and documented trend here. When one gets into complex astrological chart reading, however, there is a tendency to appear as though one is performing science, which I will explain is actually not the case. What got me thinking about this is a video actually regarding a so-called psychic detectives and a specific case where the psychic involved led a family member to the missing person's body in a wooded area near her home. At first glance, and by the comments, one could say this is rather convincing of some paranormal activity at play. For one to have a solid grasp of exactly why some people would be skeptical demands true comprehension of what the precise process of the scientific method actually is. Some people refer to this as a method of inquiry, and I guarantee that this solid grasp and not merely a peripheral interpretation is exactly why such skepticism exists. It is not due to a mere desire to belittle and mock those who believe in the paranormal, psychic abilities, astrology. Rather, it is a honed and often academic comprehension of how the method of extremely rigorous testing is the very thing that brought us our current advances in such technologies as medicine, rocketry, engineering, and other ventures that would absolutely look like a paranormal miracle in times past. The invention of a microprocessor is the result of such complex and specific repeatable electrical operations that it truly makes the so-called scientific presumptions of astrology look extremely sloppy by comparison. Yet how many making YouTube ad revenue centered around one paranormal activity or another are actually fully comprehensive of such rigorous methodology? Not many, I would say. I would say at this point that for a skeptic to be involved in discussing these matters with those who do believe in the mystical or paranormal, that being kind and in good faith are the best approaches to take, as many adherents that believe in spirits, ghosts, psychic powers, astrology, tarot reading are not at all intending on fooling or scamming people. Contrarily, a good faith gesture for the believers in these mystical matters, it would be fair to acknowledge that these avenues are indeed so littered with scammers, grifters, and charlatans that is undeniable, and so explains where this animosity comes from. Though that is not the sole reason why the skeptics exist here, For those involved in these avenues, many certainly will confirm the presence of these types, may be referred to as toxic or psychic vampires, etc. Mysticism, metaphysics, the occult, etc., is often very attractive to predatory types. So going back to my remark on the psychic detective case, and many like it, I found the comment section of this video to be roughly, 95, 99% believers in the psychic of her skills. And anyone expressing skepticism was accused of being mean or ignoring the slightest accuracy assumed. Having a solid grasp of exactly how people who were exposed to various mystical abilities like Peter Popoff or James Heydrich, a predator who openly admitted to being a total fraud, one could see the very same methods play out among those who may, for all purposes, not be intending unconsciously fooling those poor grieving families whatsoever. So a couple of things to consider. One is the method of cold reading, where one takes very subtle, even subconscious cues during a reading and draws analysis from this. The other is what's called the Barnum effect, where vague descriptors are laid out as scientifically conclusive evidence, even when the slightest accuracy is perceived. Another is confirmation bias, in which incorrect predictions are often ignored and quickly forgotten. For believers in astrology, psychic powers, etc., I cannot recommend enough a solid grasp of these terms, as they are not just vague dismissals, but specific descriptions of repeated behaviors at play, behaviors found in arenas that no one takes seriously outside of more tribal primitivistic groups today, such as phrenology, reading chicken entrails, and stuff like that. Which is more cruel, intentionally deceiving grieving families for the purpose of advancing one's career, or pointing out the logical problems with such paranormal claims? Indeed, one wishing to avoid being swindled could hardly be motivation for mere cruelty in this case. In the specific case of this missing person, the so-called psychic was very obviously operating in these frameworks, successfully guessing the location of the body using a multitude of vague descriptors, quote, southwest of the victim's house, near a big log, and the victim lived in the woods. The fact that these few specifics were proof, quote unquote, to many shows how suggestible some can be. She didn't say how far from the house the body would be found. She didn't use specific geocoordinates or points on a map. If she could solve multiple cold cases of the thousands currently existing, finding bodies in more unpredictable locales, this would of course be of great benefit to the police as well as their career. Further, we do not know how many incorrect claims the psychic offered, and they make bad entertainment, of course. We don't know how much of the online research the psychic did of the victim beforehand, and further, many of the actual claims the psychic made were indeed factually incorrect by the police reports, which were thusly ignored by her supporters. Looking up the specific psychic, she does get frequent invites to other platforms for her one supposed correct hit, while she never offered anything close to pinpoint accuracy, and while she has no apparent other successes even remotely as accurate as this specific case, we indeed find zero other psychics offering any form of groundbreaking success or anything close to pinpoint accuracy or repeatable success. She certainly has capitalized on this one instance. They do not have a solid prediction form beforehand, laying out multiple highly accurate specifics, like in a sealed envelope with multiple witnesses, etc. So often in cases like this, you see remarks that one vaguely accurate success becomes lauded as the most convincing proof, while the majority of other successes that are even more vague in prediction become evidence as well. We do not see pinpoint accuracy. We don't see repeatable success rates by any metric. They fail what's called falsifiability, the process which removes other factors that may contribute to false positives. And so in this parallel, we see the same problems play out in terms of astrological predictions, especially for something as specific as financial advice. And so there comes the warning. Those of you who might be curious about the subject matter, with good faith and what we described as an open mind, please understand that there are very good reasons why people are as skeptical as they are. And I hope that this offers at least a bit of insight in terms of why that criticism exists in a way that might not be presented in such a way that would be described as hostility or bullying. So that's not my intention. I do intend on helping people who actually are being defrauded or scammed by some of these people, whether they intend on doing that or not.